Hello and welcome to Guys, a podcast about guys. I am Bryan, Quinby, Murder Bryan, whatever the fuck you want to call me. And last week you heard Sex Guys. And then this week I needed a new kind of guy. And not only did I find a new kind of guy, I found a new guy, period. So I would never I thought of the first person that I wanted to have on this show to talk about classic rock guys. And it was Chris Wade the whole time. So he's from And Introducing, obviously, and Chapo. He does a music podcast. So I was like, let's get him on here. He does all this hip music and stuff like that. Let's talk about like the least hip possible thing that you could possibly do. And that's classic rock.
Hey, what's up? Happy to be here. Always happy to talk music and the people who love music.
Oh, yeah.
Weirdos who, I guess not necessarily weirdos, because basically every person considers themselves a music lover in some extent. But the more it takes over your entire personality, definitely the more of a crank you become to be.
I think that the thing about this sort of thing we're looking at today is like, these people are so persecuted, yet it's just like Christianity in a way, right? Where they're like, I'm so persecuted, and there's like millions or a billion of them or whatever, and you're like, you can do whatever you want. You're like the main guy. Classic rock guys are persecuted. They consider themselves the most persecuted music fans because they're fucking psychos, and they don't understand that like everybody likes Bad Company. It's like you're weirder if you don't like the Beatles than you are if you do.
Yeah, the fact that there even exists the idea of like an aggrieved Beatles or Zeppelin fan out there is very hilarious, and it very much is. Yes, the having it all and then having lost like 1% of it. Like the classic rock was the overculture for what you had like 20-30 year run there where it basically was popular music, and then the second that it lost like 2% market share, a certain segment of the classic rock fan was like, it's over, I might as well just kill myself.
Well, the thing I wanted to start out with is something that I learned while researching this episode. And there is I'm going to go a little bit into my research for this. Number one, I went to the official Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction for 2023 video. So the guy that's saying these are the people that you can vote for, whatever.
Yeah.
And I scrolled through the comments, and let me tell you, these people not knowing that they're racist is maybe one of my favorite things about them.
Well, here, just right off the bat, the funny thing is about getting mad about this list is, I think the Rock Hall is largely stupid. I guess I'm glad that there is some kind of like professional association that honors the enduring legacies of this specific genre. But this is actually a really good year for nominees if you are going to consider this seriously. And like this, the stupid part of this is that they will then choose a top 5, but just like taken as a like longitudinal study of like what rock music is and what should be in a Hall of Fame, I think that this list of artists is like, oh yeah, every one of these guys should eventually be in this institution.
Yeah. I think like I'm getting them up here so people can hear them. I have the list here in front of me for the nominees. So we go, and these are just the nominees, by the way. That's the other frustrating thing. These are just nominees. They're not even in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But people are so fired up about it. We got A Tribe Called Quest, Kate Bush, Sheryl Crow, Missy Elliott. Guess what? That's the one that makes people the most mad. Yeah. Iron Maiden, which I guess like that the only more persecuted group is metal fans.
Of course.
I think. Somebody pointed out to me, and I searched this up, and I did see a lot of it, that my buddy Josiah Hughes, actually, he's going to do the Dave Navarro episode with me.
Okay, great.
Specific guy. But he was telling me to like search Metallica Super Bowl. And the amount of people lobbying for Metallica to play the Super Bowl halftime show is truly fucking crazy to me.
That's hilarious.
I mean,
they maybe should have at some time. That could have been fun, but you know, that moment has passed.
Well, they could play like Black Album songs on like
exactly
next year's Super Bowl. They could play like Enter Sandman. But the truth is, like,
it would be funny if they did, and this would make even more people mad. You know, if they did the kind of thing where they try to match like a hip hop artist with like an older legacy. So like when Bruno Mars played like the first 10 minutes and then they brought out Red Hot Chili Peppers to do like 2 songs that like Bruno Mars sang with, to be like, see, now we've got a little bit for everybody. It would be very funny if they had like Rihanna anchoring it and then Metallica came out and played like 2 minutes of Enter Sandman and then back to Rihanna songs. And I'm sure that would like the perfect kind of like executive brain thing of being like, we're going to bring everybody in and it's going to be a populist form of entertainment, and just every person, both the Rihanna fans and the Metallica fans, would only be more mad at each other.
Well, I'll tell you this too, like, to care this much about, I was making fun of like the idea of caring a lot about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
Like the people that like every year for the nominations, Howard Stern spends like fucking 20 hours a week talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And the type of guy I'm talking about, here's 2 ways to know you're a classic rock guy. 1, you share music videos of songs that everybody's heard 7 million times. Like you go online and you're like, you got to hear this. I'm jamming out to Metallica.
Yeah.
And I'm jamming out to Enter Sandman or like Bad Company, as I said, or like I Want to Hold Your Hand, like the most obvious songs.
And then it would, the post would be like, you know, ... true music ... and it's like Led Zeppelin Black Dog.
Yes, or yeah, like Immigrant Song. They're like, this
exactly.
was when people played fucking instruments, you know what I'm saying? And like the other thing that I think is, so I have a buddy who gets shit-faced drunk on Fridays and Saturdays. You know, works a regular job, wants to have fun on the weekend.
Hey, everybody's working for the weekend.
Exactly. And on Friday and Saturday night, he gets really drunk and he watches like rock videos on YouTube. And like sometimes it's Ghost or something like that, which is new. I can't make fun, but other times he's like trying to hit me to like some obscure Iron Maiden situation, like song that like I show, not even the song. They play Run to the Hills in the show, but like a like 1983 Iron Maiden show. It's like, you got to hear this, man. If you don't like Iron Maiden, you will love them. So the next one's Joy Division and New Order, which,
I mean, look, if I've got a dog in this race, it's Joy Division, New Order.
I mean, New Order is a different band.
That's the weird thing, is that it's a little weird to induct them both like that. It's a little like, I mean, again, I even as I'm saying this, I'm imagining a classic rock guy getting mad at me, but it would be a little bit like putting the Beatles / Wings as like one nomination. But look, I can't be too precious about these things. I'm like, fine, if they want to put both those guys in under one, sure. I like it all.
So the next one's Cyndi Lauper. I said it funny. I actually know it's Cyndi Lauper. George Michael, Willie Nelson, Rage Against the Machine, Soundgarden, The Spinners, The White Stripes, Warren Zevon. So
great list. All great artists.
Truly not a bad list at all.
Just hitting all quadrants. You got some real classic rock, you got a little country, you got some new wave, you've got some solo artists, you got male, female, you got hip hop, you got cross racial. It really is hitting all the quadrants there. They did a good job putting together a nominating list.
Yes, it is definitely one of the better ones. I mean, having like, I mean, honestly, Joy Division being on there is super cool because that's a band that you would just think, nah, fuck it. You know what I mean? That's like my like pet project.
Or
where
like,
it's
well, maybe we'll get around to them in like season 80 or something.
that's like, I don't know if they're actually in, but if there is a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame without question mark and the Mysterians in it, then I just don't think it's even worth having it. That's like my pet like one because I love that fucking band. But so
Here's a great song.
let's bring in a little bit. We have a guy, his name's Michael Noland. I got to see what is The Bottom Line. So he does a show called The Bottom Line with
Definitive.
Michael Noland. I mean, and I'll tell you, man, that's a good name for a show. I don't think anybody ever considered. It's like one of those names that, like, when you're trying to think of a name for your show, and you're like, nah, there's a million people doing The Bottom Line.
Yeah.
And so I want to start out with a comment from a man that we don't even fucking really know if he really said it. And I'm not shitting on him or anything, but Freddie Mercury. Now, this quote showed up in so many comments about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And we are in a golden age of music. There will come a time when technology becomes so advanced that we'll rely on them to make music rather than raw talent. Music will lose its soul. So apparently Freddie Mercury said that, and it is a meme that must be making the classic rock groups, Facebook groups and shit, you know?
Now, again, because it's 2023, and I'm sure that's been going around for a while. Obviously, the first thing that comes to my mind when you say that now is, oh, like people would be saying like, oh, they're going to like come up with an AI that writes pop songs. But I'm sure that in the places that you're seeing it, it is about people using like turntables and samplers.
Yes, it is. It is. It's anybody who doesn't have a guitar, a drummer, and a bass player.
Sure.
I guess you could have a drum machine. They do allow drum. A lot of these people do allow drum machines.
It depends how, but if you have one drum machine, you need at least 2 live musicians next to it.
Yes, that is true. That is very true. So you have to have a guitar player, and like maybe a horn player. There's like hardly any horn players. So let's start out Michael Noland's video, and then we'll weave in and out of Michael Noland, who is, I watched this video, and he is the perfect avatar for the classic rock guy. And he is, honestly, he's our first actual guy. Last week it was sex guys. It was mostly just guys like that were commenting on like Hedonism 2 posts, doing the review of Hedonism 2 and then having like their toddler in the picture with them.
Oh God.
To like in their profile picture. So here we go. Let's start them out. You guys are going to love this. I'm telling you.
I wanted to talk about how the Rock and Roll Hall of Shame
Yes.
is at it yet once again. Now,
I have heard it, but Twitter, when you say they're at it once again, it's 100% of the time it's a joke. So hearing somebody actually say they're at it again, and by the way, the Rock and Roll Hall of Shame is perfect.
Just to set the stage, I have to say that this guy does look like he goes to the barbershop and says, "Give me the Geddy Lee." He's a very much a 70s studio type looking individual.
He is so perfect for this. I want people to know he has long hair. He has the gray beard. I think he dyes his hair. Now, I don't know for fucking sure, but his beard's one color and his hair is another color, and his hair is blonde and his beard is gray.
I will say that I hope my hair looks as good as his does when I'm however old he is, but I'm sure it will not.
Would have done anything for that, actually.
Yeah.
So
man's got a mane.
He does. In the background of this, I see a Led Zeppelin sign, a Beatles sign. I see Abbey Road sign, and a Dark Side of the Moon sign that kind of snuck in. I didn't see that at first.
Yes, they're all made out of cut out metal and some have like LED lights on them. I mean, look, he's got a cool setup. He's got some MIDI keyboards. He's maybe got a mixing board down there. The man tinkers on the on his production console, I imagine.
Look, I agree with you that he has like a cool technology setup. I'm with you on that. But having
the signifiers, yeah.
yeah, I know people like the Beatles, and I know that I'm kind of rude for not liking them very much. They're just I picked a band in the battle, and even in the battle, I just picked a band that I like that has more of my sensibility with the Rolling Stones. Now, I'm not saying that the Rolling Stones are the greatest band in the world. I'm saying that they meet my sensibilities way more than the Beatles. So.
Yeah, well, it's like it is the combination of the three. Again, this is like very, very snobbish signifiers. But if I'm setting something up, and I want to convey to my audience that I am an authority on these things, it's like, you know, I've got the Beatles, I've got the Icarus Led Zeppelin logo, I've got the Dark Side of the Moon. It is like the three most top of the rack, like first thought, final thought things to convey classic rock. What you really want to do to convey authority is you put like, you got your Beatles thing in there because you're like, those are my guys. But then next to it, you have like, I don't know, like a Paul Revere and the Raiders.
Yes.
Like thing to be like, but I go deeper than that. You know, maybe you have a Nuggets, like the record cover of Nuggets there to be like, I go for like the deeper garage. You know, I've got some levels to this taste. It's not just like, what are the first three things that come to mind?
I do think though that these are his three favorite bands.
Oh yeah,
because this is what a classic rock guy. Now you can sub in the Stones for the Beatles or have them both, but like, you know, you gotta have the Who, you gotta have the Rolling Stones, you gotta have Led Zeppelin. I mean, I would say Black Sabbath, but I'm hesitant because I like Black Sabbath and I don't want to be considered one of these guys. Let's hear
yeah, go for it.
We'll hear a little more of this guy. He's great. We're going to love it.
Tonight, before we get into the 2023 inductees, the initial inductees, I wanted to talk about how this ludicrous organization manages to survive in 2023. First of all, in February, we get this list, right? Then in May, we get a reestablished list based on votes. And finally, in fall, we are treated to some of the very best of award shows. Not. And just
so one of the things you brought up to me when we were talking in our DM was that award shows are also like the enemy of these guys. Yes. And I kept thinking about it, and it's like, okay, you're not supposed, if you're cool, you should not get mad at the Grammys. But if you're a classic rock guy and you see the heavy metal Grammy goes to Ozzy Osbourne, how could you be mad at the Grammys at all? Like, in what world could you be actually, because they don't, like the Grammys, I don't know how they pick this stuff. I've always wondered if it's more album sales or just like things that are in the ether to a bunch of people across the country. But like, you can't, these classic rock guys, man, like classic rock guys win Grammys every single year. Some of them, like the Beatles, will win one just for a re-release or a reissue.
I mean, it's funny how the Grammys have the stab in the back to heavy metal guys forever. Cause like we were watching the Grammys the other night, and just because the phrase kept rattling around in my head as if something was wrong with it, like I don't know, something about the grammar just strikes me. I just tweeted, it's music's biggest night. And somewhere in the replies, someone still today brought up Jethro Tull winning that first heavy metal Grammy, and it's just like the making such a legendary bungle that it is the original sin of the Grammys to any, like they could, you know, award like the most obscure heavy metal bands who only release music in those fonts that it's impossible to actually release their names or read their names.
Yeah.
And people would still bring up like they gave it to Jethro Tull once. That band has flutes. They can't win a heavy metal award.
I remember the last time I got fired up about the Grammys was I think it was 2003 maybe. Or no, it would have been 2000. And it's when they gave Deftones a Grammy for Elite, which is a song that I don't like. So it's like there's like 2 Deftones songs I don't like. And one of them won the Grammy. And I was like, come on, give it. Now, if somebody's checking them out and they're listening to Elite, it's like, all fucking ruined, man. Let's read a comment from John Jones on our Rock and Roll Hall of Fame announcement video. John Jones says, it's way, way, way too early for someone like Missy Elliott to be a nominee. What happened to bands like, and this is
here we go.
And I love this shit. Foreigner, New Edition, Luther Vandross, Motley Crue, Bryan Adams, Richard Marx, and Kenny Loggins. Who the hell is at the helm of this entire situation, otherwise known as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
It's just so funny that from that guy's comment, you can tell that he stopped listening to, like, the last year he listened to new music was 1990, and his music taste is like perfectly preserved in amber from like what was going on in the year 1990.
Exactly. And it's funny too, because it's like, I mean, Michael Nolan. Well, we're gonna catch a little bit more of this because Michael Nolan starts explaining why people don't belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Which
I just before we go on, just based on that Missy Elliott comment, just some back of the napkin map. Missy Elliott's first single, or when she appeared on the scene, was 1991, which is now what, 32 years ago. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame began in 1987, which would put the approximate same amount of time back in literally 1955, the year rock and roll, the year by its own calculation, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame says rock and roll was invented. So it would be like at that time being like, come on, it's too soon to bring Elvis into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
In 1987.
You're totally right. So
whatever happened to Glenn Miller?
Andre said, finally, Cyndi Lauper is nominated. She deserves to be inducted this year. She started out in rock bands in the 70s and became a huge rock and pop artist in the 80s. Over the decades, she has won Grammy, Tony, Emmy awards, and sold 50+ million records. Go Sydney. Now he gets a reply. The only instrument Lauper played is the dulcimer. Guitar? No. Bass? No. Keyboard/pianos? No. Drums? No. She cannot hold a candle to Peter Frampton, who has been overlooked again and again. It's now the Music Hall of Fame, not the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
It's just, see, that's the insanity about this whole idea, is that it makes you put these insane comparisons in your head where you have to like look at Cyndi Lauper as like a 1-to-1 equivalent of the entirety of, say, Iron Maiden, and be like, okay, what are the relative, how do you compare these two against each other? Which, I mean, is the great thing about like the concept of rock and roll, is that, at its biggest, most inclusive, most, I would say best, it's like almost anything can be considered rock and roll. Philip Glass at various times could be considered like rock and roll. Just to pull, like, I don't know, a classical-ish composer out of my head. So it is always just very telling who people reach for when they have to put down somebody like, no, not Cyndi, not Missy. Peter Frampton is just happens to be that guy's fave,
Well, and I'll say this too, and Michael Nolan's going to bring this up, but in my opinion, if you got this Hall of Fame, right? The Baseball Hall of Fame, very good baseball players do not make it in. There's like a vote where like, he's not in, but he was great and people really like him, but he's just not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And to me, that everybody gets a trophy thing is fine with me. I love giving people trophies. I think it's great. But putting Peter Frampton in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to me is like, well, anybody just gets in. Now anybody can get in. I mean, he was, you know, I
He
don't.
will be put in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame,
He
or
will.
at least nominated within the next decade.
He will. Let's check in with Michael.
Okay,
As far as the list this year, well, all I can say is the shenanigans keep a happening, don't they? Now, as you guys know, I've been very critical of Jan Winter, not only with the way he ran Rolling Stone magazines, but how he has run the entire Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But recently, we've been treated to new management, haven't we? We've talked about John Sykes in the past. I personally think he is a minion to Jan Winter.
This guy has had I imagine that this guy has had a grudge against Jan Winter since like 1971.
Yes, absolutely. He's so mad at Jan Winter. And like it now has become a big conspiracy where they're like, well, all the classic rock YouTube guys are mad at Jan Winter. So we got to put it like he thinks that like Jan Winter was moved on because there was uproar about Jan Winter.
So the fan response was enough to create a scandal that got him pushed out. I mean, I cannot imagine that Jan does more than I would guess 8 hours of work a year, like tending to his Rock and Roll Hall of Fame responsibilities. He probably like sees this list, or somebody puts this nominating list in front of him and he goes, yeah, that looks good.
Yeah, he doesn't even probably know some of the newer artists, you know. I mean, I would say that he knows all of them that come in, but like these people also don't think about, maybe they don't talk as much about influence. I mean, they will talk about influence if it means like the Beatles influenced every music that came after them, which was something my dad used to say to me.
Mm-hmm.
When I was growing up. He's like, yeah, and then I pissed him off because my dad's a classic rock guy. I pissed him off by saying, well, Korn's actually more about hip hop and like Rob Bate, and he got so fucking furious at me. He was like, no, the Beatles, you know, and it's like, all right, whatever.
Well,
dude.
I'm sure there are Beatles songs that the Korn guys would say that they liked, but yes, I don't think that when they sat down to write "Freak on a Leash," they were thinking like, now, how are we going to reinterpolate "She's So Heavy" into this beat?
True. Okay, Eric Ellis says, what's been happening to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame these past years is sickening. It truly is. And the reported new changes are just more of that downward spiral. There are too many genuine rock and roll people that are deserving of entry. Not only that, people need to go back and reread what this, quote, institution of rock and roll was founded for. And it was not for the purpose of celebrating pop stars and country stars. It is disgusting when one thinks of the true rock and rollers that are being ignored while non-rock and rollers are being recognized.
I mean, but it's so mind-blowing to me because it is like tautological, like that they would say like this supposed institution of rock, like this is just something that people made up in the 80s to like put a museum in Cleveland.
Yes. You're totally right about that too. It is just like a museum. And
yes,
the museum probably has several Peter Frampton things in it. You know,
I bet you could see the original Peter Frampton talk box there. Have you ever been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I have not. Have you?
I have, actually. A long time ago, I had like a one-day stopover in Cleveland on a road trip or something. This was like in college, and we went there, and it's fine. It is very like boomer mindset. The one thing that I remember sticking out to me is something personally I thought was surprised to see there, but was a little chuffed, were the drummer from the Violent Femmes' brushes. Like they have a whole like display case of like famous drummers' drumsticks, and the one pair of brushes, not sticks, was from the Violent Femmes guy, and I was like, oh, that's funny.
Are
but
you
otherwise,
not a
it's like
Femmes guy, Chris?
no, I think the Violent Femmes are great.
I do too. I saw them live once.
I saw them live once. They were playing in Central Park, free show, And we got up there and they played Prove My Love. And then there was a lightning flash and they all huddled off stage and they were like, we have to leave for safety concerns. Here's Blister in the Sun, and played it in like 90 seconds at like lightning speed. And then we're like, sorry, we'll reschedule. Bye.
They have like a real, I guess like the Violent Femmes is a band that has a real like mixed, because I had thought everybody always liked them, you know, like because growing up my sister had some of their stuff, and now I heard Blister in the Sun. They play Blister at the Sun at clubs, at like dance clubs in Columbus. Like you'll go in and they'll be playing like, you know, whatever the popular pop song is, and then they'll play Blister in the Sun. So when I found out that like there are also people that vehemently hate them, it's one of those things when you get online and you see what's going on with people, and you're like, oh, I'm not very smart.
Yeah, I assume that the Femmes are in that same genre as like, you know, like maybe Ween, or they might be Giants, where a certain subset of people will be like, this is a novelty band. These songs are too silly to be real songs, and thus this whole band is like a joke to me. But I don't know. It's like when you sit down and listen to the first Violent Femmes album, or Viva Wisconsin, listen to them play live, they slay. So I don't know. I've always thought that they were Midwest rock gods.
They were great. Dag Nabbit had to say this. Well, this is better than last year's list. Still no Jethro Tull. Ian Anderson and company were pioneers in steering away from blues cliches, which, by the way, that's a bad thing. If you said that.
Yes, you're right. Wouldn't other people there? Isn't the exact previous comment basically like, no, more blues cliches? That's what this institution is about.
Yeah. Well, that's what I want.
Yeah.
So in steering away from blues cliches and merging rock with British Isle folk and European Baroque. And of course, they have an army of fans. Only problem was, back in the day, Ian Anderson was Trump-like, and that he would strike back at idiot journalists who leveled unjust, hackneyed criticisms at Jethro Tull. And I think that's a sore spot for those writers who sit on the board. Also, it was pointed out to me a long time ago that the suits of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame don't really like heavy metal or prog rock. I agree with that assessment.
Well, I am also a big Jethro Tull fan. That was my dad's favorite band was Jethro Tull, so that was his version of the Beatles. Although he did not care enough about music to actually say like, "Oh, you must respect Jethro Tull and their lineage." He was more of like, "Well, I found one band that really does it for me, and now I don't really need to think about bands anymore."
I mean, I was like that for a while. Like the older I get, right? Like I go through these phases of like, I'm only listening to new music. And then I go through a phase where it's just like, well, I'm basically just listening to Phil Collins now because it reminds me of like being a kid.
Yeah.
Let's check in with Michael Noland here.
Well, can I?
And so Jan Winters,
on that last comment, just reading between the lines there, do you think that guy is a Trump guy who's also a big Jethro Tull guy? Because he's talking somewhat admirably about Ian Anderson's similar to Trump's disposition to punch back at these haughty journalists.
He's absolutely 100% that. I really think that like most of these guys are maybe not Trump. I'm not going to be like that, but like a Republican, like a Republican like pre-Trump.
I gotta imagine that the kind of guy who gets angry enough to post on like the YouTube comments to defend their strain of classic rock, whether it's no more blues or more prog, that's the true rock and roll, are probably your like classic Trump Biden voters who maybe like appreciated Trump's bravado, but then kind of realized that they might have been on the wrong side of history there. And because classic rock and roll, you got that you're a bit of your rebel spirit, but you kind of want to believe that you're in the good fight,
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I do think like that it is a very Trump, and it's maybe not even Trump. I think, as I said earlier on here, it's people that are racist that don't consider themselves racist. Like it's people that are kind of racist but like they just think that like their opinion is normal. Like that like, oh, everybody knows this stereotype. And they don't really know why they're mad. Like they don't know why they're mad about hip hop being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But we're never mad.
It's just not real music, Brian.
Yes.
Everybody just knows that it's not real music, and we all have the same working definition of what quote unquote real music is. That's just something everybody ambiently knows, of course. So once we work from that definition, you know that hip hop's not real music, so they shouldn't be, it's like that kind of thing where it's like, okay, well, buddy, think for a little bit about like what defines music.
I mean, I posted this earlier in the week, but like the people that were mad about Missy Elliott, and actually Michael Nolan's about to say something that
let's go some Nolan.
that I do think comes back to this.
Control over this entire situation is still firm as far as I'm concerned. Now, I want to read something by John Sykes. He's the chairman of the board we talked about. He's responsible for this list as far as I'm concerned. And listen to what he has to say here. He says, this remarkable list of nominees reflects the diverse artists and music that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame honors and celebrates. Really, diverse. I love that word. What about the word divert? Think about it. They're both from the same root word. Divert meaning to go around, and diverse means pretty much the same damn thing when you're talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Ignoramus, if you ask me. I mean,
the Rock and Roll Hall of Ignoramus.
Stretching there.
And see how mad he is. And a lot of the comments that I read referred to that diverse thing too, right? Like that they were like, diversity, what the heck? That's not what we're here doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's such like old hat at this point to point out that like rock and roll is like basically especially in like the early, when it gets solidified as a thing in like the early 60s, is basically like the white expression of bringing together all of America's like diverse folk music traditions into a palatable way for the youth over culture to receive it. And so like diversity is in about it is not only just recognizing the world that we live in now, but actually like honoring the origins of rock. Like that's been said a billion times. And honestly, the interesting thing for me would be asking Missy Elliott what she herself would think about being included in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Like, is that something that she would find honoring? I mean, I guess getting invited into any professional or like industry, award must be honoring in some way. But like, is there a hip hop Hall of Fame that has this kind of press? Is there, I'm sure she has at least a few Grammys. She must have some Grammys, right? Like that to be, I don't know. Is that something that Missy Elliott personally would be like, oh yes, I care about being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I think, yes, I do. Because I think that like in the music industry, I don't know. It feels like they all kind of like, they don't mind getting a Grammy,
No, I mean, it would rock to get a Grammy. I would love a Grammy.
I mean,
have you ever looked at how many
Billboard award, which is literally just selling records.
Yeah. Brian, have you ever looked at how many Grammy categories there are now for like the undercards of like spoken word recordings, distributed internet recording? Like there are a bunch of legit Grammys you could conceivably get as a podcaster. Not that I really imagine ever getting one, but just the fact that it's out there, that like something that in the realm of what we do, like audio, best audio storytelling is like a Grammy you could get. I'm like, maybe I could design something to try to win a Grammy someday.
I think that like the problem with that, and this is the problem with the music that wins Grammys, is that like they want your podcast to sound like a radio show.
Yes.
And like, that's not like what I'm shooting for. And I think there are so many, but especially like when I just look at the people around me, like the Chapo, the YKS, like I don't think anybody's really shooting for like an afternoon drive radio show, but that is what the Grammys would consider like
But
a
what if
good
I did
podcast.
just to try to win a Grammy?
You should. I mean, do an NPR style thing, Chris. I think, you know, you got a voice that works. Like my voice wouldn't work or something like that because it's, I don't know, loud and annoying. But like the NPR voice is something that, you know, and like basically just make a murder podcast.
Yes, I
And
think
I
that's what
think
I.
you win.
Yeah,
You should, though.
I'm
If you
gonna.
won a Grammy, I'd be so happy.
Maybe that'll be like a 5-year goal, is to design the thing just from the ground up that is the shameless Grammy attempt.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's a little argument I ran into. So James says, I just won't understand. He won't understand
He
why Alice in
refuses.
Chains will never be nominated. Soundgarden. So Garrick replies to him, Soundgarden needs to get in first. And then Tokyo Convertible 87 says, why? They both pretty much started at the same time and in the same scene. Garrick replies, Soundgarden is viewed more highly than Alice in Chains on the grunge totem pole. And then Tokyo Convertible ends the argument by saying Alice in Chains are a well-respected band as well. So I don't understand your thinking with this. Thin Lizzy, Bad Company, and many others deserve to be in before either, to be fair.
I mean, I would say true on the latter point, but again, it's just like this whole thing is so wildly arbitrary. You know, again, like a Grammy or an Academy Award, it's like a certain amount of music was released or movies were released in the last year. And we can look at like a discrete category and kind of the overall trends. And even if you don't agree with the value judgments, it's like at least, you know, there's a contained amount of things. But then just having to like look at this list of nomination and think of like every band that has released music, so and most solo recording artists since 1955, and compare them all, immediately direct each other against each other on some completely inscrutable list of qualifications that is basically only dictated by the handful of industry insiders who are giving out this award, probably simply about who was nice to them at a party 10 to 15 years ago. Like that's the real quality that's being judged here, is like one of these ancient magazine editors like had a nice drink with George Michael in like 2007 and was like, you know who deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? George Michael.
You're definitely right about that. I mean, that is kind of the people that are voting and stuff like that know a bunch of rock guys and probably are. But Chris, I would say that it is more kind of. I'm going to read you this one from Dwayne from YouTube. This list is horrible. If Dolly Parton and Willie Nelson and Missy Elliott, etc., get in, Tom Brady should also make it in immediately now that he's announced retirement. No joke. He has as much right to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a country and a rap artist. Then Tommy replies to him and says, Johnny Cash was country, and almost nobody complains about him being in the Hall of Fame. So Dwayne replies, Cash gets a pass because of his start at Sun Records. He also had a FU attitude for a time. And lastly, Ring of Fire is a true rock and roll song. So the reasoning can be bent for people that you like. You know what I mean? Like if you're one of these classic rock guys, you will say Elvis. I mean, none of Elvis sounds like rock music. But a question I want to ask you here is, like, what do you think is the newest band that Michael or any of these people listen to that in 30 years, if they're still alive, that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominates? Like, is there like a band for them? You know, like they seem to not be so mad at the White Stripes.
Yeah, I think because the White Stripes is also, they're very much doing like, you know, Jack White has a throwback thing and he's like a guitar god, and it's all like that is like very clearly 21st century rock music that is like the most palatable to any like kind of classic rock person. I'm trying to think of even any other 21st century. I mean, I think you could go with like a lot of those early New York guys. Like, I don't think
Oh, yeah.
the Strokes would offend any like real classic rock heads once they're eligible if they got in.
What do you think about now, though? Can you think of maybe the only name that popped into my head just now is, and they got a long way to go, you know, to get there, but like Turnstile?
Turnstile, I
be.
mean, they're at the if they continue their upward trajectory. I also, you know, when a band that comes up to me when people are like, oh, there's little, you know, rock and roll doesn't really, there's no big rock and roll band, is always Tame Impala, which is
God.
like very, I mean, very much like a huge psych rock band. And they're massively popular, even though I think they would be way, way off the radar of any like classic rock guy. But I think that they would be like immediately recognizable to like any Pink Floyd fan, you know?
I got an interesting thing for you here too. So I went to the classic rock subreddit. Just r/classic rock. I figured that was the most
Gotta go there. Yes.
sort of that's where they're gonna find themselves. And I was looking at the description for the subreddit, and something struck me as interesting. So the description for the subreddit is anything relating to rock up to the late 80s. So first of all, what is the cutoff in the 80s? Like, is there let's say, is it possible that like Poison should get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Yes.
Like,
I mean,
it makes sense. They just made up the late 80s, and then Nirvana doesn't get in. You know?
Yes, Nirvana. Here's in my cosmology of what is and always will be considered classic rock. I think it goes up to, in my head, the last classic rock album is Appetite for Destruction. And when that is the one that really caps off that era. If you have to put like a tombstone on classic rock, and then what comes after that is a new kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think it's more of it is a move. It moves, right? So when I turn on a classic rock station in my car, I'm going to hear When I Come Around.
Yes.
Or like a Pearl Jam song. Like, those things show up. It's basically what the people in their 30s and 40s listened to growing up.
But it's funny because
it
is like classic rock does, even though the name of it confers a time period, but it also conveys an aesthetic. Like, you could imagine, you know, hearing maybe Nickelback on a classic rock station in not too long, or maybe even now, but probably not Beck, you know?
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, I think so. I think you're probably right about that. Let's check in with Michael here.
I mean, when are we going to get Lou Reed into the Country Hall of Fame? Or how about Olivia Newton-John's I Honestly Love You as the greatest hip-hop song of all time? Helen Reddy, I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar, sounds like an excellent suggestion for the Rap Hall of Fame as well. You see, in his statement, he really tells us where his real true intent is, doesn't he? On one hand, using the word diverse, and on the other hand, using the term rock and roll. Rock and roll is either rock and roll or it is something totally different, and it's time to rename this. All right, so I'm going to get onto the list here.
We got to rename the rock and that is kind of the thing, right? Like, they would rather just have this museum be renamed, I think. And
yeah,
it is a museum that I have to fucking stress this. Like, nobody fucking cares. It's I mean, I'm not saying nobody, because obviously we found a bunch of people that care.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, I don't think, like, well, when he said Lou Reed, it made me like, if Lou Reed hadn't gotten in to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I do not think Lou Reed would care that he didn't make it in, you know?
I believe one of the few artists I mean, obviously they're huge shitheads, but or at least John Lydon is. But one of the few artists who did not attend their induction was, of course, the Sex Pistols, who I believe referred to it as like a puddle of piss or something, which, you know, like broken clock. But I mean, that's what. So it's like these guys are mad at the expansive definition of it. But in my mind, the thing is like the thing about having an expansive definition of rock is it is the play from this organization to stay relevant into the 21st century, and B, it is the acknowledgement that for that like 30-40 year chunk in the latter half of the 21st century, rock and roll won. It was it was not just like the most popular music, it was like the music, and everything that kind of got born out of that at that time was in some way rock and roll. And so then to like retroactively be pedantic about it is really to, you know, try to deny your own victory at a certain point. You know, you're like, you're trying to be there, you're trying to uphold the greatness of these bands, but then be like, be like the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd. This is the greatest music ever made, and these great performing artists were absolutely not inspired by any of it.
Yes. Oh, and this is the greatest. You got to also, and you're right, they won. It's what we were saying earlier about Christians. How, like, the classic rock fan is oppressed. I mean, I've heard something I heard, and this was years ago, or obviously years ago. It's like almost a decade and a half ago, was I would listen to Opie and Anthony, and they would talk about how mad they were that there isn't a classic rock station in New York anymore, and that it's all either country or Spanish talk. And that used to like make them, and you know, they're mad about the Spanish talk, you know, and Spanish music, obviously. But I just remember like them, like that to me would be like a marker that, like, I mean, nobody wants to listen to these songs anymore. You've played them too many fucking times. You know, there is on XM radio and maybe on Sirius, there used to be a station called Deep Tracks. And I would listen to that station when I was working and wanted to listen to music because, yes, they play like Bruce Springsteen, but they play a fucking song that you haven't. They don't play like Born to Run.
Yes.
Which is not.
I mean, that's the thing. Again, like, yeah, I mean, probably both our entire childhoods, even though we're like about a half generation or so off. It's like the classic rock radio mainstays from like whenever I was started being conscious of the radio, probably like the early 90s until now, have mostly been like the same 500 songs that hit, you know, any Rolling Stone top 500 list. You hear the same ones over and over. And there is this massive output. You know, there are whole, you know, eras of careers of some of the monsters of this genre, like Zeppelin or the Who or whatever, who that do not get any play in favor of like the same 3 songs. And so, like, you know, at a certain point, trying to argue against diversity is basically arguing for your own favored format's irrelevance.
Yes. Yeah. And these are also the same guy who will, you know, the classic like stand-up comedy joke of like, when I go see the Who or the Rolling Stones perform live, I go to the bathroom when they play a new song. They don't want any more. They don't want any more classic rock. There isn't allowed to be any more classic rock. You only get what there was, and not even all the songs. Just like you said, 10 Rolling Stone songs, 10 Beatles songs, 10 Zeppelin songs, maybe 10. And like they just, there is, when he's mad about diversity, it's like he really is mad because he doesn't want new songs at all. Just don't make any more new songs.
Yes. It is in its own way a kind of a, you know, a suicidal mindset, because you're like, everything about this thing that I am that I'm theoretically passionate about is over. It's done, you know, and this is not a living art form anymore. because to acknowledge that there might be a diversification of what is considered it is to acknowledge that the world is diversifying and things have become different since it is whatever moment in time I ascribe to be its heyday. And so it's like really it's a conservative thing of trying to stand toward history and say stop, to try to say that these things cannot be considered rock and roll, means that this thing is essentially dead, and what we're doing here is erecting a mausoleum, not like a living institution.
I think I first heard this on Chapo. So the end of history.
Yeah.
We hit the end of history probably like in the mid 90s. I don't think like Everclear. I don't think these guys like Everclear, right? Like they don't even think about Everclear. It doesn't exist to them. And like
as with most things, the clearest delineation is always 9/11. Like none of these guys would think that basically any music made after 9/11 would be deserving of this thing, which basically means that their music died when the new millennium hit,
and when a lot of their favorite acts kind of died, or like a few people in the band aren't around anymore, and like they're just very they would let Teen Spirit, Smells Like Teen Spirit, they're fine with that, but they don't have any interest in listening to like Territorial pissing.
Yes. I mean, while we're talking about death, I mean, that's the other thing. Like, again, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as an institution is very silly. And it's honestly guys like these who give it any legitimacy, because the more mad you get at it, the more serious you are seriousness you're imparting on it. But the thing that I find very grim about it is that they do these nomination lists, and as we've both said, it's a good list of nominees, but then as Mr. Noland here explained, they'll slowly whittle it down to 5 people of this list of, I don't know, a dozen, 15, something like that. And there's always this like weird like death gamble game to that, where it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame presenting this list, getting people ginned up about it, slowly eliminating people so people get madder about it, then bringing in like 5 new people at the end of the process. And so to ginning up more interest the entire time, but it's also there's this weird like death element to it. Is like, are we going to induct Willie Nelson before he kicks it? We'll find out. Tune in the fall. That I find very grim. And again, if you want this thing to be like a living institution, I see no reason. There are a lot of bands out there. You can induct 10 a year. Just announce the 10 you're going to put in and put all 10 of them in.
I mean, I see this with wrestling a lot. Is that like,
oh God, I'm sure that the Wrestling Hall of Fame is like between nominees and inductees, at least one of them dies every year.
Yeah, and well, the thing is like it's a Hall of Fame that's voted on by a bunch of media people and stuff like that. A lot like this. I mean, it's basically one guy's Hall of Fame. Like Dave Meltzer is the Jan winner of this thing.
Yes,
but like every year, someone dies and then gets inducted into the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. And all you hear about after that is, well, they wouldn't have got in if they didn't die.
Or the other corollary of, oh, they just brought him in because he died.
Yes. Every time. People that would have no prayer at getting in, if they die, they might get in. And it's like, it's not even that fucking, that's the thing. It's not even that fucking serious. It's fucking wrestling. It's rock and roll. It's just calm the fuck down. Tyler Patterson's pretty mad. He says, F you guys, no Boston, bad company, Styx and Foreigner. Many great rock artists, not even nominated. Get Iron Maiden and Soundgarden in, please. And then Dag Nabbit replied, well, I can understand Boston not getting in under performer category, but Tom Schultz and company should definitely be in there under the newly expanded musical excellence category. I'm sorry. Boston sold a lot of records. Boston got their flowers,
Yes.
It's
again, it's just like very revealing, like the things that people choose is that like, oh yes, your taste stopped progressing in like 1978 or whatever, like whatever the heyday was of that like late 70s FM radio, like Boston, Foreigner, Styx. Like that's like the argument against it thing is like, this is an objectively bad list, and here let me give you the objectively better ones. And it's always like, oh yeah, these are just whatever bands you liked when you turned 20.
They're terrible too, Chris. I mean,
I
have like a Hall of Fame that's like, I guess, hard to get into. I just don't think Foreigner even belongs there. Like, these people are so mad because fucking Boston isn't getting their flowers.
Okay, well here's my argument for Boston is that guy made that record in his basement alone in like the late 70s. That is a real triumph of do-it-yourself studio wizardry. So that would be my argument. See, that's the thing is like you throw like any given year, you throw one of those bands on the list on a list, as diverse as this. And I'm like, yeah, sure, Boston, throw them in there. Styx. I've seen Styx live. It was a great show.
You've seen
like
Styx
Foreigner.
live?
Yeah, I saw them play at the Blue Ash 4th of July festival in about 2004, Blue Ash, Ohio, where I grew up. And you know what? Me and my buddies went as a joke because what else were we going to do? And Styx really blew us away.
Well, I did the same thing. This is so embarrassing to me to say, but I saw Rush live once because I don't know what was going on. I guess I didn't like any of the songs except for like Roll the Bones when he raps. Like, I dig it when he raps. But I went to the show and I was like, this is fucking great. This is really fun. Fucking guitars coming down from the ceiling and playing. Yeah. But like, I would never be like, Rush is like great because I don't like the classic. I don't like that era. I mean, that popular shit and that stuff. Boston, Foreigner, Foghat, all that stuff. That was like the pop music of their time. That was like the fucking what they think Missy Elliott is. Like this person that had a few pop hits. Like, that is what those guys are too. Like,
shiny, overproduced, commercial, substanceless. Like, that's like a lot of those bands that guy lists. But now with the foggy glasses of time on, he's like, no, that's the real classic material. And A Tribe Called Quest, who are these genre fraud nominees?
Well, Michael Stein says and I can't tell if this is woke or not woke, put in a few dozen more rappers before Iron Maiden for equality, not counting indigenous people. So I think this guy might think that Iron Maiden are indigenous people. Maybe. I'm not super sure what he was saying, but I like that he wants equality. Like, I would like to also, there's probably hardly any indigenous people in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
That is a good question.
When you talk about diversity, like, again, these people aren't looking for diversity. These people, I think, don't know a lot of songs by prominent Black artists back before, like blues stuff and shit like that. Like, I know that the only reason I know Leadbelly is because of Nirvana when he said this is a Leadbelly song.
Yeah. I mean, for most of these people, for most of the commenters, it's like, yeah, we've got, if they want, we've got surely Jimi Hendrix is in there. Boom, there's one. It's like that kind of thing.
Well, Howard Rich has a question that I saw oftentimes. Greg Harris, that's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame guy, presenter. Why Huey Lewis and the News aren't inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when they labeled Cleveland the heart of rock before your time? Jeff and Flash, where are you? It's really time.
See, the funny thing is that, like, for me, their version is like, these other people don't deserve to be in because my guy deserves to be in more. And basically every band you bring up, I'm like, yeah, sure, put them in there. They deserve to be in there. Huey Lewis and the News, why not? but like, I mean, I have no problem with any. But it is like it's the artificial like scarcity generated by the way that all these awards or Hall of Fames do these things that makes you make these bizarre comparisons instead of being like, here's a list of 12 great bands. Can't wait until my other bands that I think are great are in as well. I mean, again, if this thing goes on forever, eventually all these people will be in.
Oh yeah. Well, Mike C, I can't wait to
Just
read
imagining a guy who's like on his deathbed being like, I just wish I lived long enough to see Boston inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
this. But like a Make-A-Wish kid, their
Yeah,
dad
exactly.
talks the Make-A-Wish kid into fucking asking for Boston to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Here's a good one that'll piss off many listeners of this show. This is Mike C. He says, look, I liked that Kate Bush song from way back in the 80s, but it's blatantly apparent that it's just because of Stranger Things playing that song. That's the only reason she's on this list. No offense to her, but she doesn't have a depth of recordings that garner being in the Hall of Fame. What's next? By that logic, they'll next nominate the Rembrandts for composing the theme song from Friends. Holy fuck. I know so many people that really love Kate Bush.
Yes. I mean,
And have for a long time, and she does have a depth of songs. You just haven't heard them.
yes. The thing is though, he's probably not wrong that the Stranger Thing, like that is a completely an almost unprecedented resurgence of an artist like that based off of a streaming show like that, but which I think we're going to probably be seeing more and more with the power of like TikTok to just dredge up bizarrely obscure songs into like huge prominence. Not that Running Up That Hill is like bizarrely obscure, but I've seen things that have popped up on TikTok to become memes that are like fourth single off of like an indie rock band that was whose name I never heard, that was active for like 4 years between 2012 and 2016, become like millions of views on TikTok. So yeah, I'm just saying that, its algorithm is weird. So he's probably not wrong that nomination at least has something with her being shockingly massively popular in the year 2022, but who cares? Great songs, great performer.
He's
Let
got
her
a little
in.
bit more of an explains a little bit more, because somebody said actually Kate Bush has been nominated 4 times. So this was her 4th nomination. So the Stranger Things probably helped, but she'd already been nominated a few times. But now he's like, just like the Proclaimers, 500 Miles was a huge hit here in the USA in 1993, when some actress on that Johnny Depp movie was playing it in her Walkman. Then the producers took notice and put it in the soundtrack. 5 years after it originally came out in 1988, mainly only a college radio and alternative radio stations in 1988. And from memory, a similar thing happened with Red Wine by UB40. It became super popular here in America several years after it was released. And by the way, I bet you more people, parentheses, in America over the age of 45 know the Rembrandt's Friends theme song more than know Kate Bush. But that's not even fucking fair.
Well, you gotta appreciate that guy really cracking open the history books. But it's funny that he would go into that much knowledge of like boomerang one-hit wonders, songs that became popular years after their release, and like have that detailed of information about it without having the background of like Kate Bush's massive and enduring popularity for the decades up to this moment, where then she like weirdly ascended to another level of popularity in a new generation. I mean, I guess in the vaguest possible terms, these are all similar things, but you got to take the context into account.
Let's check into Mike
folks.
here.
And I do want to say this list contains some excellent artists. Some are rock and roll, and some of them should never have been even considered for this list. But for the most part, all of these inductees are either great singers or very talented at the very least. Now, to be honest, I like a lot of genres of music.
Okay, I loved this part. He's going to list his favorite genres, and this is the most classic rock guy list of genres. Here we go.
Love great pop music. I love classical music. I love some of the solo singers from the 40s and 50s. I loved Frank Sinatra. And so this isn't just a matter of me being a one-trick pony. If it isn't rock and roll, you could die. Now,
So he's got good rock singers, Frank Sinatra, and some classical.
Pop. He said pop, but
Okay.
but I don't think he likes like Justin Bieber. You know what I
No.
mean? Like he's one of those guys that like I'm telling you, when he says pop, he's talking about the Ronettes. I just guarantee it's stuff like that and not like modern pop, which to be completely fucking honest sucks. I mean, if
This
you
guy was
like it,
probably
that's fine.
this guy was probably very mad at Madonna's existence in like the late 80s.
Yes. Yeah, Madonna. Who's the 90s? It would be Backstreet Boys.
Oh yeah.
And NSYNC. Like he got real fired up about that. Now it is, and this is kind of what shows you that these guys are mostly conservative. It's like Megan Thee Stallion is
yes
that thing, you know.
He probably is
hero or mad at.
You know, he God, there was a like, he probably thinks that's simply over the line pornographic. I'm trying to remember the verbiage of this tweet, but it's like, it's something along the lines of like, boomers will play you an AC/DC song that's like, we're gonna do the bad thing all night long, and then wink at you being like, we didn't know what that was about back when that song came out.
That is true. Yeah, there was definitely a lot of that stuff too, where it was like every AC/DC song, a band that these people would say belongs in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Every fucking single AC/DC song is about fucking. It's like, oh, big balls. Oh man, what could that possibly? We didn't know what big balls was.
Well, they were more subtle about it back then. Now it's these new hip hop artists. They really put it right in your face.
Yes. What's Michael got to say here? We're gonna wrap it up here.
When I look at this list that we're going to be discussing tonight, I can only think of the many rock bands, truly classic rock bands that have deserved this honor, not only for years, but decades. This sets my teeth on edge, folks. I can't even begin to believe they still do this after all the criticism that they've endured. All right, so first up, George Michaels. Now, I know George Michaels famously stood in for Freddie Mercury during his benefit, and that gave him some rock cred. But when I listen to this guy, with the exception of a couple of cuts, first of all, the guy's got a great voice.
He's serious because he doesn't call them songs, he calls them cuts.
You're so right. They do say that. These guys will say like a cut or a track. It's like, come on, dude. But George Michael apparently not good enough. But he does have some nice things to say about him.
I love it when he's saying, yeah, I gotta have faith. And that had a bit of a rock tinge to it.
A bit of a rock tinge.
I hear this.
I mean, it's a rock song, man.
It is a rock song. I'm sorry, George. I mean, you could say that he's more on like the side of pop than not, but George Michael, I'm sorry, this is a rock singer. I'm sorry.
You're right.
You have to include that if you include like by any definition of what rock and roll is.
Well, you can't even explain what rock and roll is if George Michael.
Yes.
When you look at Faith, like it has every single thing that makes a rock and roll song. He's playing fucking guitar. These people fucking get so mad that people can't play guitar but are musicians. But George Michael playing guitar, not enough.
No,
he doesn't matter.
Yes.
Let's I wish we could get through the whole thing because I'll have to play Michael Nolan on a stream sometime because I really want to hear. I didn't get to hear his thoughts on Joy Division, which is actually the one that's interesting to me. Let me see if I can scrub forward.
Yeah, let's see if I'm sure he has a picture of Ian Curtis looking moody on this.
Oh, he likes Sheryl Crow, by the way. That's not.
Yeah, I mean.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, there we go. Those lovable lads from Manchester.
What? So far out of the inductees, they are the most rock and roll, if you ask
Here
me.
we go.
Next up, Joy Division,
Okay, let's
New
see.
Order. Yeah, that's right. 2 band names for the price of 1. I'm not really familiar with this band at all. I'm not into punk. I never was into punk. And evidently they are
Sure, they are a
identified, or at
post-punk
least
band?
partially, as
Yeah, come on, dude. Get
Yes.
it right. It's post-punk, not punk. Oh, I hate this guy for the punk thing. You know why I hate him for that? I'll tell you why. Because I used to be an I don't like punk guy. The whole time I was listening to like Korn and like all that music, I hated punk. I have said this before, and people are completely fucking shocked. I don't think I liked punk until like 2012. Like I didn't even ever give it a chance, you know?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, when you were really into that, did you consider? I mean, how would you have genre define that? Like, was that metal to you, or did you go full on like, no, I am into new metal?
you know what? At the time, though, it was. I would just say I'm into rap metal. I just
Rap
think
metal.
like new metal is such a name that came kind of later. And
Well, I kind of remember even at the time it was like it was mostly used derisively, right? You know,
the
you
two
call
things
something
that
new
it
metal, be
was,
like, "Ugh."
the two things that it was, I'll give you the brief history of that genre's names. First name that they ever had was pimp rock. That's what they were. That's what they were trying to make happen. Like, and the most famous new metal website to get news is the PRP, stands for the Pimp Rock Palace.
Oh wow.
Didn't work out. So we went with Rolling Stone did the next name, or no, Spin did the next name and called it. I hated this. It made me so mad. Mook Rock, like Mooks, which I was certainly one. I just it wasn't fair. And then rap metal, then new metal. But
Rap rock, I remember.
yeah, I think they hated the term, and it makes sense. Like, not all those bands rap.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like Korn never raps. They don't, their songs are all like kind of singing and screaming, but
If they do anything, they scat sometimes.
yeah, but the music and behind them, I mean, like there are stuff that just straight up sounds like a Cypress Hill song
Right.
on their stuff. So that is a rap influence. So yeah, I think I liked rap metal. New metal came like way later when when I first got on Twitter and was kind of talking to people about liking these bands. People would say like new metal as the because the fucking magazines all decided that's what it was. Honestly, it should have been pimp rock. I think that was the move. Korn tried it, didn't work out, but that would have been the one that it would have never died, Chris.
We'd still be listening to it.
Yeah. All right. Let's hear a little more Joy Division talk here.
It's a proto punk band. Now, it's interesting because their early stuff I read was not punk at all. As a matter of fact, it was considered very generic. After the passing of one
fucking wait. Oh my.
See, this is so funny because that's exactly backwards. Like the earliest Joy Division records, like their EPs and stuff, are like very straightforwardly punk, and then they kind of expand past that. It is just so funny, like the Joy Division starts putting out stuff in like 77, and even by like that time, he's like, no, I'm true music has already ended there. I am not used to I'm not learning anything beyond that.
Well, the other funny thing is, I'm not going to listen to it. I'm going to read about it.
Yeah.
So like, it's like I went online and read about Joy Division and New Order, and it's like you should try listening to some of the fucking songs. I mean, Joy Division is so fucking important and so fucking good, and kids still find Joy Division. My daughter likes Joy Division. Like, I didn't turn her on to it. I listened to it a little bit when she was growing up, but not a lot. I didn't turn her on to that stuff. She liked them and The Cure, which is another band I'm sure he doesn't think should get in. But she likes that kind of music. She got into that music when she was like 13. So these things are very enduring, but these guys didn't listen to them in the moment. So it's not enduring to them. They just think it was a flash in the pan sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's just very funny to be this gatekeepery about this stupid institution with having so little curiosity about undeniably one of the most important bands even in the most conservative definition of rock and roll's history.
Well, they were also kind of generic. I mean, we'll see what he had to say after that. He called them very generic for
their key members. There was a reconfiguration. And you know what? They decided to kill two birds with one stone on this band. Now, this may be a great band. I've got to give a listen to them. I will. But I got to tell you.
Bro, you're like 75 years old. You're running out of time.
Could you do it before you make the video
about how mad you are about this inductee?
I love it. I love it.
Compared to the other bands that are waiting in the wings, this is ludicrous to me. However, rock and roll they are, and if that be the decision of the Rock and Roll Hall of Shame, power to them. I have no problem with the induction.
Literally, like, I've not listened to this band, but I like went to their Wikipedia and it did say Joy Division is a rock and roll band, so I will accept that definition.
I love it. I love it. I'm gonna read like one or two more of these.
Yeah.
Okay, this is from Common Sense. So technically,
so you know it's correct.
I mentioned this early on the first episode that like maybe some ladies will find their way in the guys, but I truly am just looking for guys. Period. I'm gonna making fun of guys. Hey Greg, where's Boston? Bryan Adams, Ted Nugent, Foreigner, Loverboy, and REO Speedwagon. Jesus. Loverboy.
Another band that I have seen live at a Blue Ash, Ohio 4th of July festival.
Well, that's kind of sick, though. I would see any of these bands live. You know, yeah. I would not on purpose, by the way.
Hey, if it was free and a walk from your house and Foreigner was playing, you'd probably be like, why not?
I mean, I would even see Ted Nugent, and I fucking hate that guy. Like so much. Ted Nugent has made it onto like 8 of my series podcasts just because I hate him so much. He comes up in different ways, and it's like, okay, this one, like it would be like, this one's for Street Fight, this one's for Shocktober, this one's for like, you just start naming them. And
I mean, I would kind of want to go to a Ted Nugent concert just to scope out the crowd. And again, it would be a great place to observe some kinds of guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My brothers went to a Ted Nugent show because it was the 4th of July sort of situation, and he just decided to go. But he's like, change your name to the Music Hall of Fame. That's our favorite line. Because you have tons inducted that are not rock. Many rap, country, pop, disco, parentheses, yes, disco. Can you believe it? Donna Summer and ABBA are in there. Yet many true rock bands are not. What a farce. Okay. Guy that is still mad at disco might warrant his own full episode.
They got so mad about that. It was designed to make people dance, and that's not what you're supposed to do. Rock music's supposed to get you angry.
It is you like they say that it's for fucking, but you're right. It's just anger. It's pure, like it's supposed to give you a feeling of like, or it's like about like fucking elves and shit. If you're looking at
yes.
You're looking at Led Zeppelin.
It's either about being mad or being a wizard.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that was classic rock, guys. It was an incredibly fun time, Chris. And
thank you.
Tell people where to find you.
I am at where to find me? You can find all the Chapo stuff at patreon.com/Chapo Trap House. We are in the middle of our series on the 30 Years War, which is, to make it classic rock related, you could imagine Led Zeppelin writing a song about the 30 Years War. It is very metal in its own way.
I'm going to get Matt on this show to talk about old timey guys. Like history. Yes. I think I was thinking of doing history guys.
Yes, history guys. Oh, you could definitely have him on to do various types of people who get mad about specific types of history, like weird internecine fights in like the Civil War community.
Yeah, history guys is a good one. I'm like, I have a doc of just guys that are going to come up. So
let me finish my plug, and then I also have a a recommendation for you. And then, of course, my music podcast with my wonderful wife, Molly, that is And Introducing, soundcloud.com/and-introducing. And then Molly and I also do another podcast where we have read the entirety of Infinite Jest on mic to figure out if it's good or not. That's a 980-page book of which we are 70 pages out from reading in finishing reading in 10 pages chunks over the last 3 years. That's called Infinite Cast. So those are my 4 main podcasts: Chapo Trap House, Hell on Earth, And Introducing, and Infinite Cast. All that said, I have a Types of Guys recommendation for you, Brian. There's this Korean competition show on Netflix called Power 100. Physical 100. Which, yes, Power 100. I say Power 100 because Molly kept saying it sounds like a radio network.
I saw
Physical 100. And the concept is that they get 100 different types of strong people, and strong, like broadly defined, like bodybuilder, like display bodybuilders, to like strong men, to like MMA guys, to Taekwondo guys, to like wrestling women, to firefighters, to like there's a high, like a competition cheerleader in there, just like every different type of way you could be. There's some military guys, cops, every different way that you could be like quote unquote strong. And then they make them fight endurance and physical challenge competitions against each other. And the competitions themselves are very fun, but it's also just a great survey of types of guys, because you have all these different high level competition guys, but it's not just all MMA guys. It's like an MMA guy and a firefighter, and it's just types of guys very much on display. And I really hope that they make an American version of it, because I think it would be very funny to see the Americanized types of guys on display.
That is right up my alley. Strong people doing strong stuff. I just put history guys in the thing, and I do have strong guys, which I should put strong guys. I mean, the one that I'm really looking forward to do. I'll tell you a couple I'm really looking forward to doing. Weather guy, Arrowwood guy.
Is that like weathermen, like different types of weathermen throughout the country, or like weather fans?
Guys get way into weather. You know what I mean? Like where it's like, I have a fucking thing in my backyard that reads the weather instead of like opening an app. But
yes.
Weather guys, sweepstakes guys, Yelp guy, and Yelp guy is going to be fun. I get it. And
you can definitely find some true insane people on Yelp.
Going to get Will on here to talk about movie guys.
Great.
Will's kind of a movie guy. But thank you, Chris, for
this
doing
is awesome.
my second episode. It was very fun. And we'll see you next week with Karate Guys with John Gabris.
Oh, hell yes. All right. Thanks, man.